Dad, do you have $50,000 for my wedding? That was the question from my daughter Beatrice. When I asked her when the ceremony would be so I could reserve the date, her reply chilled me to the bone. You're not invited. I just want your money, not your presents. Subscribe now, because what I did next will change your view of family forever. My name is Andrew Vidal. I am 65 years old, and my entire life I believed I had done things right as a father. When my wife Nora passed away in 2016, I was left alone with two children. Mark, who was 30 at the time, and Beatrice, who was barely 24. They were difficult years, I won't lie. I had to learn to be both a father and a mother at the same time, to cook those recipes Nora made with so much love, to listen to my children's problems without the wise filter she always had. But I did it. I worked hard in my import business. I sacrificed vacations, dinners with friends, even opportunities to rebuild my romantic life. All so Mark and Beatrice wouldn't feel the emptiness Nora had left. Mark was always grateful. He became a doctor as he dreamed, and even though he has his own life, he never stopped visiting me on Sundays. Beatrice, however, began to change when she met Ryan Castle in 2021. He is an architect, comes from a wealthy New York family, and ever since they started their relationship, I noticed my daughter begin to distance herself. Calls became more spaced out, visits shorter, conversations more superficial, but I never imagined we would get to this point. It was a Tuesday in March 2024. I remember the exact date, March 16th. It was 7 in the evening, and I was in my study reviewing some documents when my phone rang. It was Beatrice. I was genuinely happy because we hadn't spoken in almost 2 months. I answered with enthusiasm, hoping to hear that sweet voice that reminded me of her mother. But what followed was completely different. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, with a cold, almost professional tone. "Ryan and I are getting married in June, and I need $50,000 for the wedding." There were no preliminaries, no, "How are you, Dad?" There was no warmth, just a transaction. I stayed silent for a few seconds, processing the information. My daughter was getting married, and I was finding out like this, over the phone, in a call that sounded more like a bank loan application than a conversation between father and daughter. "Beatrice, that's wonderful," I replied, trying to sound excited despite the knot in my throat. "When exactly is it? I need to know the date so I can get organized, to see what to wear, to prepare some words. If you're asking me, your mother would have wanted that day to be perfect." There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line, a silence that lasted too long. Then she said the words that broke me in two. "Dad, you're not invited to the wedding. Ryan and I decided it will be an intimate celebration, only with close people, but we need the money. So I just want your money, not your presents." I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. I closed my eyes and gripped the edge of my desk. Had I heard correctly? My own daughter, whom I had raised alone for 8 years, to whom I had given everything, was telling me that I was not welcome on the most important day of her life. But she did want my money. "Beatrice, I don't understand. What does intimate mean? How many people are going?" I asked, trying to keep my calm. "That doesn't matter, Dad. I just need to know if you can transfer the money this week. Ryan has already booked the venue, and we need to pay the deposit." There was no explanation, no apology, not a hint of empathy, just a cold, calculated demand. I told her I would call her back and hung up. I sat in my chair, looking at Nora's photo that is always on my desk. She looked at us, smiling, surrounded by Mark and Beatrice when they were little. "What do I do, my love?" I asked that photo, as I had so many times in these 8 years. But this time, something inside me changed. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel like crying. I felt an absolute clarity, a determination I hadn't experienced before. I got up, took my phone, and dialed John Reynolds' number, my best friend and trusted lawyer for 30 years. "John, I need to see you first thing tomorrow. I have something to tell you, and I need your professional advice." That night, I couldn't sleep, but not from pain. I was awake because my mind was already working, planning, understanding that this wasn't just a wedding. It was a lesson my daughter needed to learn, and I would be the one to teach it to her. The next morning, March 17, 2024, I arrived at John's office at 8 o'clock sharp. He was already waiting for me with 2 cups of freshly brewed coffee. We've known each other since college. We've been through divorces, losses, successes, and failures together. If there's anyone I trust completely, it's him. I sat across from his desk and told him everything, word for word, the conversation I had had with Beatrice. John listened in silence with that serious expression he gets when analyzing a complex case. "Andrew, this is serious, not just because of the money, but because of what it represents," he finally said. "Your daughter is treating you like an ATM, not her father. And the worst part is she's doing it without remorse." I nodded. "I know, John. That's why I called you. I'm going to give her the money." My friend looked at me, surprised, almost annoyed. "What? Are you crazy? After how she treated you, you're going to reward her?" I raised my hand for him to let me finish. "Listen to me. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. But this isn't a gift. It's an investment in the most important lesson she will learn in her life. I need your help to document all of this. I need every step we take to be recorded." John leaned back in his chair, slowly understanding where my plan was going. "You want to protect yourself legally?" "Exactly. But it's more than that. I want that when this is over, Beatrice understands the true cost of her decisions, and I need you to help me do this the right way." We spent the next 2 hours devising a strategy. John would note every transaction, every communication, every detail. He recommended that I record future phone calls, save all messages, and keep a meticulous record of everything. When I left his office, I went to my old office at the company I founded 35 years ago. Although I retired 3 years ago, I still maintain a small space there, filled with memories. On the walls are photos from different stages of my life. I stopped in front of one in particular. Beatrice was 6 years old. She wore a white dress and was sitting on my shoulders during a vacation in Malibu, California. Nora took that photo of us. My daughter looked at me with absolute admiration, with those eyes full of innocence and love. What had happened? At what point did that child, who saw me as her hero, become someone capable of excluding me from the most important day of her life? I remembered how I cared for her when Nora died. Beatrice was 24, and in her last year of university, she fell into a deep depression. It was I who took her to therapy every week for 8 months. It was I who sat with her at night when she couldn't sleep, who hugged her when she cried, who assured her that her mother would always be proud of her. I paid for her master's degree in business in Boston, $52,000. When she finished, I gave her an apartment valued at $240,000 so she could start her independent life. 2 years ago, I bought her a car for $38,000 because hers had broken down. She never asked me to pay me back for anything. I never considered them loans. She was my daughter. But now, looking at that photo of the child on my shoulders, I understood something fundamental. Perhaps I had given her too much without teaching her the value of things. Perhaps in my attempt to compensate for Nora's absence, I had created someone who only knew how to receive, but not how to be grateful. I took out my phone and opened my banking app. I looked at the balance of my main account, $822,000, the result of a lifetime of work, sacrifices, and intelligent decisions. I took a deep breath and scheduled a transfer of $50,000 to Beatrice's account for the next day, March 18th. But before confirming it, I did something else. I opened a spreadsheet on my computer and began to list every dollar I had given Beatrice since she turned 18. The apartment, $240,000. The car, $38,000. The master's degree, $52,000. Trips, gifts, furniture, loans she never repaid. When I finished, the total left me breathless. $293,000, almost $300,000 given with love, with the hope of seeing my daughter happy and successful. And now, she was asking for $50,000 more without even inviting me to share her joy. I saved that document with the name Beatrice Investment Tukey IL6 and backed it up in 3 different places. Then I called Beatrice. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad," her voice sounded impatient. "Beatrice, I have thought about your request. Tomorrow, first thing, I will transfer the $50,000 to you." There was a brief silence and then, "Perfect, Dad, thank you." I waited for her to say something else, anything that would indicate some humanity, but she just continued. "I'll send you the account number by message. I have to hang up. I'm in the fitting room looking at wedding dresses." And she hung up. There was no "I love you." There was no "this means a lot to me." There was absolutely nothing that would make me feel like I was her father, and not just her sponsor. That night, in my empty house, I prepared a simple dinner and sat in the same spot where Nora used to sit. I looked around, the walls full of memories, the furniture we chose together, the garden she cared for with such devotion. "My love, I'm going to teach our daughter something important," I said aloud, as I sometimes do when I miss her too much. "Something I should have taught her years ago, and I know you would agree with me." On March 18th, 2024, at 9 in the morning, I executed the transfer. $50,000 left my account for Beatrice's in a matter of seconds. I stared at the computer screen, watching the balance decrease. I felt no regret. I felt something completely different. Control. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of the situation. At 9:17 a.m., I received a text message from Beatrice. Just 2 words. It arrived. Not even a "thank you, Dad," or an "I really appreciate it." 2 cold words, as if she had received a package from a courier. I captured a screenshot of that message and saved it in a new folder on my computer that I titled Evidence. Then I replied, "Glad to hear it. I hope your special day is beautiful." I left the message deliberately ambiguous. I didn't say I hoped to be there. I didn't say her decision hurt me. Just a neutral phrase that anyone could interpret as basic courtesy. She didn't even reply. Over the next few days, something curious began to happen. Beatrice started posting content on her Instagram with unusual frequency. Normally, she posted once or twice a week, but now she was doing it daily, sometimes several times a day. Everything was related to the wedding. Photos of the event hall they had reserved, an impressive mansion on the outskirts of New York City, images of cake tastings at a luxury patisserie, videos of the tasting menu at a 2 Michelin-star restaurant. Each post screamed opulence, exclusivity, perfection. I realized something important. She wanted me to see all of it. She wanted me to know exactly what my money was being spent on. It was her way of showing that she had made the right decision by excluding me, that her wedding would be so spectacular that I wasn't necessary. But what Beatrice didn't know was that each of those posts was becoming evidence. I called my nephew Daniel, my younger brother's son, who works in technology. He's 28 and understands social media better than anyone I know. Daniel, I need you to teach me how to do something, I told him when we met at a cafe on March 23rd. I need to permanently save everything Beatrice posts on Instagram. Photos, videos, stories, everything. Daniel looked at me curiously, but didn't ask uncomfortable questions. Uncle Andrew, there are apps for that. I can set one up for you that automatically downloads all her public content. In less than 20 minutes, my phone was configured. Every time Beatrice posted something, a copy was automatically saved to my device with the exact date and time. And boy, did she post a lot. On March 28th, she uploaded a video of her wedding dress, an exclusive design by an internationally renowned designer. I researched and discovered that dresses from that designer start at $20,000. On April 3rd, photos of the invitations, cards with gold embossing, imported paper, handmade calligraphy. On April 9th, a complete tour of the venue, decorated with exotic imported flowers. Each detail was more extravagant than the last, and I meticulously documented everything. One afternoon, while reviewing the new posts, I saw something that stopped me cold. It was an Instagram story Beatrice had shared. A poll for her followers. Big wedding with 500 guests or intimate with 50. 92% had voted for the big one, and below it she had written, "You guys get it, big, definitely, 500 guests." I took a deep breath. My daughter had lied. She told me it would be intimate, only close people. But the truth was that 500 people would witness her happiness, while I, who was financing everything, would be deliberately excluded. That night, I documented that specific discovery. I wrote in a physical notebook with the date and time. April 9th, 10 p.m. Beatrice publicly confirms 500 guests. She lied to me about the intimate nature of the celebration. I was building a case, not just legal, but moral. Every piece of information was another brick in the structure of the lesson she was about to learn. On April 15th, I received an unexpected call. It was Mark. "Dad, I have to tell you something, and I don't know how." He started in a tense voice. My heart raced. "Tell me, son." "I received Beatrice's wedding invitation. It's on June 15th. Dad, there are 500 people on the list. Cousins we haven't seen in years, co-workers, even neighbors from her apartment building. But you're not invited. What's going on?" Mark's voice trembled between confusion and indignation. "I know, Mark." "She told me clearly," I replied calmly. "But you paid for the wedding, right? I saw her Instagram. Everything looks incredibly expensive. How can she do this?" My son was genuinely distressed. "Mark, I want you to go to that wedding. I want you to enjoy your sister's day, but I need you to tell me everything you see, every detail. Can you do that for me?" There was a long silence. "Dad, this isn't right. I'm going to talk to her." "No, son, not yet. Let me handle this my way. Trust me." Mark agreed, albeit reluctantly. When we hung up, I opened my spreadsheet file and added a new tab. Witnesses. Mark would be my eyes inside that celebration. He would see exactly what every dollar of my money had been spent on. He would see hypocrisy in its purest form. And then, when the time came, his testimony would be invaluable. That night, as I saved all the new screenshots in my evidence folder, I counted the files. 143 images, 27 videos, dozens of messages, all meticulously organized, dated, backed up. Beatrice was building her dream wedding, and I was building something much more enduring, a lesson about consequences, respect, and the true meaning of family. On Sunday, April 28th, 2024, Mark came to my house for lunch, as he did every week. I prepared roast lamb, his favorite dish since childhood. As we ate, I noticed he was restless. He moved the food around on his plate without really eating. "Dad, I have to tell you something else about Beatrice's wedding," he finally said, putting his fork down on the table. "I received the complete guest list by mistake. Ryan sent it to me, thinking I would help with the table arrangements." He pulled his phone from his pocket and showed me an Excel document. My eyes scanned the names. 517 confirmed people. I recognized third cousins we only saw at funerals, college classmates of Beatrice's she no longer even spoke to, Ryan's business associates, social media influencers she followed. Even the name of the woman who cleans her apartment once a week was there. 517 people, but my name didn't appear anywhere on those 32 pages. "Can you send me that file?" I asked calmly. Mark nodded and instantly forwarded it to my email. "Dad, this is humiliating. I can't believe my own sister is capable of something like this. Do you want me to talk to her?" I shook my head. "Not yet, son. I need this to run its natural course." That afternoon, after Mark left, I printed the complete list, 32 pages that represented 32 reminders that for my daughter, I was expendable. But that list gave me an idea. I sat down at my computer and opened the master file I had been building for weeks. I created a new spreadsheet titled Complete Financial Analysis, Beatrice Vidal. I started from the beginning, from when she turned 18 in 2010. I went to my office and pulled all the bank statements I keep organized by year from a filing cabinet. I'm old school. I've always kept physical copies of everything. Page by page, line by line, I began to reconstruct 14 years of financial support. September 2010, $10,000 for her first semester university tuition. December 2010, $800 for a laptop she needed for her studies. March 2011, $2,000 for an English course in London during spring break. Every transaction had its proof, its justification, its moment. I worked for 5 hours straight, stopping only to make coffee. When I got to 2016, the year Nora died, the numbers increased significantly. Psychological therapy, $3,200 for 8 months. A trip to Italy with her friends to clear her head, $4,500. A complete new wardrobe because she needed to feel better, $2,800. I had given her all that without a second thought. She was my child. She was suffering, and I would do anything to alleviate her pain. Year 2017, her master's tuition in Boston, $52,000 paid in 2 installments. Year 2018, the apartment, $240,000. I bought it in her name, no mortgage, completely paid off. Year 2019, furniture for that apartment, $18,000 from a design store she chose. Year 2020, when the pandemic affected her job, I transferred her $10,000 monthly for 8 months so she could support herself, a total of $12,000. Year 2021, the car $38,000. Year 2022, the remodeling of her kitchen $23,000. Year 2023, a loan of $15,000 for an entrepreneurial venture that never took off and was never repaid. And now 2024, $50,000 for a wedding to which I was not invited. I added everything up. I checked twice to make sure there were no errors. The total appeared in the final cell of the spreadsheet, $463,200. Almost $500,000. I stared at that number for several minutes. $463,200 invested in a daughter who now treated me like a stranger who simply signed checks. I calculated mentally, with that money, I could have bought 2 more apartments in exclusive areas of New York City. I could have retired 5 years earlier. I could have traveled the entire world 3 times, but I invested it in her education, in her well-being, in her future. And she took it as if it were her right, never as a privilege or a sign of love. I saved the document with the name Total Investment, Beatrice 1990-2024 XLSX, and printed it. 5 pages of numbers, dates, concepts, 5 pages that told the story of a father who gave everything and a daughter who never valued anything. I placed those pages in a blue leather folder that I bought especially for this purpose. On the cover, in my best handwriting, I wrote, "For Beatrice when she is ready to understand." That night, I called John again and told him my discovery. "Almost $500,000, Andrew. That's a fortune," he said in a serious voice, "and she doesn't even consider you worthy of a chair at her wedding." "Precisely, John. I need your help with something else. I need to review my current will and make some changes." "Are you sure about this?" my friend asked. "Completely sure. It's time for actions to have real consequences." We agreed to meet at his office the following Tuesday, April 30th. Meanwhile, I stored the blue folder in my personal safe, along with all my other important documents. It would be safe there, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Beatrice continued to post photos of flowers, dresses, and decorations on her Instagram, oblivious to everything. She kept building her crystal castle, unaware that I was documenting every crack in its foundations. June 15, 2024 arrived, the day of my daughter's wedding. I woke up at 7 in the morning. As always, the sun streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating Nora's photograph on my nightstand. "Today's the day, my love," I said softly. "Our girl is getting married, and I won't be there. But don't worry, I have a plan." I showered, shaved carefully, and opened my closet. I took out my best suit, the dark grey one I bought in Milan 2 years ago. I put on a navy blue silk tie and my freshly polished leather shoes. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a 65-year-old man who refused to look defeated. I looked elegant, dignified, strong. If my daughter didn't want to see me at her wedding, at least I wouldn't stay home feeling miserable. At 11 in the morning, I called Delmonico's restaurant, one of the oldest in New York City, located right in the historic center. "Good morning, I'd like to reserve a table for 5 people tonight at 9, I said. "Of course, sir. Any special occasion?" asked the kind voice on the other end. "Yes, a very special celebration." I called John first. "Tonight we're having dinner at Delmonico's formal attire. We're going to toast to dignity." My friend understood immediately. "Count me in, Andrew." Then I called Robert Mendoza, my business partner, for 20 years before I retired. After that, Frank Hill, my college roommate, with whom I've maintained a friendship for 40 years. And finally, my younger brother Louis Vidal, who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, but took the first train upon hearing my invitation. I spent the afternoon quietly. I read the newspaper in the garden. I watered the plants Nora loved so much, listened to classical music. I didn't turn on the television, didn't obsessively check my phone. I simply existed in peace, knowing that 30 miles away, in a luxurious mansion, a wedding was being celebrated, paid for entirely by me, without my presence. The irony was almost poetic. At 8:30 in the evening, I arrived at Delmonico's. My 4 guests were already waiting for me at the entrance. Louis hugged me tightly. "Brother, what Beatrice is doing is unforgivable." "Tonight we won't talk about the unforgivable," I replied with a smile. "We'll talk about what's valuable. Friendship, loyalty, dignity. Those things money can't buy." We entered the restaurant, a historic place over 300 years old, with dark wood ceilings and walls full of history. They seated us at a private table on the second floor. We ordered a fine vintage wine, roast prime rib, rack of lamb, the famous filet mignon. The food was exquisite, but the company was even more exquisite. John told anecdotes from our college days. Robert recalled successful negotiations we closed together. Frank talked about his grandchildren. Louis shared stories of his life in South Carolina, and I simply enjoyed being surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. At 10:30 at night, as we savored a cheesecake dessert, I took out my phone. I had been consciously avoiding looking at Instagram, but now was the time. I opened Beatrice's profile, and there it was, photo after photo of her wedding. The dress was indeed spectacular. Off-white, with French lace and a 10-foot train, the hall was decorated with thousands of white roses and orchids. The tables had crystal candelabras and fine porcelain dinnerware. There was a 3-tier champagne fountain, a 10-piece live band, a 5-tier cake decorated with edible gold-dusted flowers. The photographs showed the 517 guests enjoying themselves, dancing, laughing. I recognized faces in every image. Cousins, aunts and uncles, family friends. Everyone was there, everyone but me. I scrolled through the photos slowly, observing every detail, and then I saw one that stopped me. It was Mark, my son, standing next to Beatrice. He wasn't smiling. He had an uncomfortable, almost sad expression. I knew that look. It was the same one he had at his mother's funeral, physically present, but emotionally absent. "Everything all right, Andrew?" Frank asked, noticing my silence. I raised my wine glass. "Everything is perfect. I want to make a toast." The 4 men raised their glasses. "I toast to the men at this table, to 40 years of friendship with Frank, to 30 years of loyalty with John, to 20 years of honest partnership with Robert, to 65 years of being brothers with Louis. I toast to you because you understand something fundamental. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by presence, by respect, by genuine love. Thank you for being here. On the day my daughter decided I wasn't important enough." The glasses clinked with a crystal sound. I saw tears in my brother's eyes. "Beatrice doesn't know what she's losing," he said in a broken voice. "Oh, but she will," I replied calmly. "Believe me, Louis, she will know very soon." We continued dinner until almost midnight. I paid the bill, $340, an insignificant fraction of what the wedding being held at that very moment on the outskirts of New York City cost. But that dinner was infinitely more valuable because I was surrounded by dignity, not hypocrisy. When I got home after midnight, I saw that Mark had sent me a message. "Dad, the party just ended. I need to talk to you tomorrow. There are things I saw that you need to know." This was too much. I replied, "Come home for breakfast. I'll expect you at 10. I took off my suit, hung it carefully, and sat on my bed. I looked at Beatrice's Instagram photos again. She had posted more than 50 just that night. Each one was a testament to extravagance, excess, unchecked celebration. And each one had been financed by a father who was not deemed worthy of witnessing it. I smiled, not with bitterness, but with the peace of someone who knows they have played their cards correctly. Beatrice had had her perfect night. Now it was my turn to teach her that every decision, especially cruel ones, has a price that sooner or later must be paid. Monday, June 17th, 2024, dawned cloudy. Mark arrived punctually at 10 in the morning, but his face showed the fatigue of someone who hadn't slept well. I prepared coffee and toast with grated tomato, olive oil, and prosciutto. We sat on the terrace, where the bougainvillea Nora planted still bloomed every spring. "Dad, what I saw on Saturday shames me as Beatrice's brother." Mark began without mincing words. That wedding was a circus of vanity. There was a professional photographer with 3 assistants, videographers recording every moment as if it were a Hollywood production. The menu featured lobster, caviar, wagyu, imported from Japan. There was a cocktail bar with a famous mixologist, gifts for guests at each table, bottles of French perfume for the women, German fountain pens for the men. I calculated mentally, and that wedding didn't cost $50,000, Dad. It cost double, maybe triple. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting Mark continue. And worst of all, during the toast, Ryan thanked his family, his parents, his siblings. Beatrice thanked her friends, her colleagues, even the event planner. But not once did she mention your name. Not once did she acknowledge that you made all of it possible. Dad, people were asking me where you were. I had to invent that you were sick because I was too ashamed to tell the truth. I nodded in silence. Is there anything else I should know? Mark took out his phone and showed me a video he had discreetly recorded. It was Beatrice, talking to a group of guests. Yes, my father contributed financially, but you understand that sometimes it's better to keep things simple without involving the whole family. Ryan and I wanted a specific ambiance, a certain kind of people, certain kinds of people. As if I wasn't that kind of person, as if the man who gave her everything for 32 years wasn't sophisticated enough for her elegant wedding. Thank you for telling me, son. I know it wasn't easy, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. What are you going to do? Mark asked. I'm already doing it. This morning, I have an appointment with John at his office. There are legal matters I need to resolve. We ate breakfast in relative silence, each lost in our thoughts. When Mark left, I changed clothes, took my briefcase, and drove to the law firm. John greeted me in his private office. Several prepared documents lay on his desk. I've been working on this since Friday, he said, gesturing to the papers. Your current will, signed in 2020, divides your estate equally between Mark and Beatrice. We're talking about approximately $100,000 in total assets, properties, investments, savings. The company, even though you're retired, you still have shares. I nodded. I knew my numbers perfectly. I want to make a radical change, I declared in a firm voice. I want to completely remove Beatrice as a beneficiary. Everything will go to Mark. Additionally, I want to allocate $300,000 to 3 charitable foundations, one for cancer research in Nora's memory, another for supporting widows and widowers, and a third for educational scholarships for underprivileged youth. Beatrice will receive exactly $0. John leaned back in his chair. Andrew, this is final. Once you sign, you can only change it if you yourself decide to. Beatrice might try to challenge it legally. Let her try, I replied. I have $463,000 documented in financial support that I gave her over 14 years. I have proof of her contempt, her coldness, her deliberate exclusion. No judge would determine she is entitled to more. John nodded slowly. I will proceed then. You'll need 2 witnesses for the signing. I already have them. My brother Louis is staying at a hotel here in New York City until tomorrow, and you can ask your associate Thomas to be the second witness. Perfect. I'll draft the final document today, and tomorrow morning, Tuesday, we'll sign it before a notary. But I wasn't finished. Is there anything else, John? I want you to prepare an official document of unrepaid family loans. I need every dollar I lent Beatrice with the expectation of repayment to appear. The $15,000 from the previous venture, the $12,000 from the pandemic, other minor loans. A total of $38,000 with compound interest at 5% annually from the original dates. John quickly took notes. That amounts to approximately $45,000 with accumulated interest. Do you plan to collect on that debt? I want to have the option. I want Beatrice to know she has a pending legal debt with me. I won't necessarily enforce it, but she must understand that her actions have real monetary and legal consequences. My friend continued writing. There's something else I should tell you, he added. My assistant researched Ryan's social media. Apparently, 3 weeks ago, he lost his position as a senior architect at the construction company where he worked. Staff cutbacks? I don't think Beatrice knows yet, or at least she hasn't made it public. That information surprised me. Are you sure? Completely. His LinkedIn profile no longer shows that company. There are already rumors in the construction sector that several projects were cancelled, leaving many architects out of work. I processed this information carefully. If Ryan was unemployed, it meant that the excessive expenses of that wedding, costing over $100,000, would be even harder to sustain. The couple would soon face harsh financial realities. Then it's the perfect time to set clear boundaries, I said. When Beatrice comes asking for more money, because she will, I need everything to be legally ironclad. I need to protect myself from future manipulations. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing every clause, every word of the new will and the loan document. Everything had to be impeccable, irrefutable, definitive. The next day, June 18th, at 9 in the morning, I entered the notary's office accompanied by John, Louis, and Thomas, the firm's associate. The notary, a serious woman in her 50s named Elizabeth Ryan, received us professionally. She read the entire will aloud. Every word reinforced my decision. When she reached the section, I expressly exclude my daughter, Beatrice Vidal, as a beneficiary for personal and definitive reasons, I felt absolute clarity. I signed with a firm hand. Louis and Thomas signed as witnesses. The notary sealed the document with her official stamp and handed me 3 certified copies. Mr. Vidal, this will is officially registered. Your wishes will be executed as you have expressed them. I thanked her, and we left the notary's office. The sun had finally come out, dispelling the morning clouds. How do you feel? Louis asked. Free, I replied. for the first time in a long time, completely free. Exactly 18 days passed since the wedding. 18 days in which Beatrice didn't call me once to tell me how her special day had been, to thank me, or even to ask how I was. The silence was eloquent, but I knew that silence wouldn't last forever. People like Beatrice only appear when they need something. It was Tuesday, July 3rd, 2024, around 6 in the evening. I was in my garden pruning rose bushes when my phone started ringing. Beatrice's name appeared on the screen. I took a deep breath, went inside, and activated the recording app I had installed weeks ago. Everything that was said would be recorded. I answered on the fourth ring. "Hello, Beatrice." "Dad, hello. Sorry I haven't called you before. The honeymoon in the Maldives was incredible, and then we've been busy settling into our new married routine." Maldives, of course, another expense they probably hadn't budgeted for. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I replied in a neutral tone. "Listen, I'm calling you because Ryan and I have an incredible investment opportunity. A friend of his is opening a boutique architecture studio, and he offered us to be founding partners. It's a unique opportunity, Dad." There was the real reason for the call. "How much money do you need?" I asked directly. There was a brief pause. $30,000. "I know it's a lot, but the projected profits are excellent. In 2 years, we could triple the investment. And obviously, we would pay you back everything with interest." Obviously, like the $15,000 from the previous venture, she never repaid. Like the $12,000 from the pandemic that disappeared without a trace. "Beatrice, I have a question before I answer," I said calmly. "Is Ryan still working at the construction company he was with?" Uncomfortable silence, very uncomfortable. "Well, there were some changes in the company, staff cutbacks, but that's precisely why this investment is so important, Dad. We need to diversify, create our own opportunities." So she did know her husband was unemployed. And instead of cutting expenses, they wanted to invest $30,000 in an uncertain business. "Let me see if I understand correctly," I continued in a measured voice. "You're asking me for $30,000 for a business venture with a friend of Ryan's, while your husband has no steady job after spending over $100,000 on a wedding to which I was not invited." The line went completely silent. I could hear Beatrice's ragged breathing. "Dad, I already explained about the wedding. It was something intimate. We needed a certain ambiance." "Intimate," I interrupted her. "Beatrice, there were 517 people. I have the complete list. The woman who cleans your apartment was there. College classmates you haven't spoken to in years were there. Social media influencers were there. But your father, who paid for every detail of that extravagant celebration, didn't deserve a chair." My voice remained calm, but each word fell like hammer blows. "It wasn't like that, Dad. It's just that Ryan has complicated family, and I wanted to avoid conflicts." "Beatrice, stop. Stop lying. Your excuse was that it would be intimate, then that you wanted a certain ambiance. Now it's because of Ryan's family. What is the truth? Because the real truth is that you wanted me out, but you wanted my money in." I heard sobs on the other end. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know I made a mistake. Please don't punish me for it now. We need this money." "Are you telling me you acknowledge your mistake?" I asked. Yes, I acknowledge it. I should have invited you. It was my mistake." "Then I suppose your next step will be to organize a family dinner where you officially introduce Ryan as your husband, where we can start anew." Another long pause. "Well, Dad, right now, we're very busy with the investment. Maybe in a few weeks we could..." Maybe in a few weeks, I repeated. It's always maybe in a few weeks, or maybe when you need something else. It's not fair for you to say that. I've always valued your support. Valued, Beatrice? I've given you 463 over 14 years. An apartment, a car, a master's degree, loans you never repaid, and now a sumptuous wedding. And how do you value me? By excluding me from the most important day of your life. I could hear her crying harder now, but they weren't tears of genuine regret. They were tears of manipulation from someone losing a battle. Dad, please, it's only $30,000. You have money, it's nothing to you. You're right about one thing, I replied. I have money. Money I earned working 60 hours a week for 40 years. Money I saved by sacrificing luxuries to give to my children. Money I invested in your education, believing I was teaching you values. But I was wrong. I taught you that Dad always solves everything, that Dad is an inexhaustible bank, that Dad doesn't deserve respect, just sign checks. That's not true, she yelled. Then prove to me it's not true. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was? When was the last time you came to visit me without needing something? When was the last time you told me I love you without following it with a request for money? There was no answer, because there was no possible answer. The answer to your request is no, Beatrice. I will not give you $30,000 or even $30 anymore. No, you can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. Her voice had shifted from crying to indignation. Exactly. You are my daughter, not my boss, not my creditor, not my charity project, my daughter. And as your father, my job isn't to finance every whim or bad decision you make. My job was to educate you, to prepare you for life, to teach you values. I failed at that, but it's never too late to start correcting mistakes. You know what? I don't need your money or your moralistic sermon. Ryan and I will get by on our own. We've always gotten by on our own. On your own, Beatrice? You live in an apartment I bought. You drive a car I paid for. You have a master's degree I financed, and you just returned from a honeymoon in the Maldives paid for with funds from a wedding I covered. That's not getting by on your own. That's living in denial. I see you've decided to become the cruel father you never were, she said with venom in her voice. No, Beatrice, I have become the father I always should have been. The one who sets limits, the one who teaches consequences, the one who doesn't confuse love with financial permissiveness. This is unbelievable. Goodbye, Dad. And she hung up. I was left with the phone in my hand, listening to the finished call tone. I stopped the recording. 9 minutes and 42 seconds of conversation that revealed exactly who my daughter was and who I had decided to be. I immediately sent the audio file to John with a message. Additional evidence, save it. Then I poured myself a glass of red wine. I went out to the terrace and watched the sunset. For the first time in decades, I had said no to Beatrice, and although it hurt, it also liberated. 3 days after that call, on Friday, July 6th, in the morning, I received a video call from Mark while I was having breakfast. His worried expression immediately alerted me. Dad, Beatrice called me last night crying for almost an hour. She says you denied her a loan and that you were cruel to her. She wants me to intercede, to convince you to help them. I wiped my mouth with my napkin and looked directly into the camera. And what did you tell her? That I needed to hear your side first. Dad, she says they're going through a difficult time and you're taking revenge for the wedding. Mark looked genuinely conflicted. Son, come home this afternoon. There's something you need to see. At 4 in the afternoon, Mark was sitting in my study. I opened my safe and took out the blue folder, the one containing 14 years of financial documentation. I handed it to him without saying a word. For 35 minutes, Mark reviewed each page. I watched as his eyes widened more and more, as his jaw clenched, as he shook his head repeatedly. $463,000, he finally whispered. Almost $500,000. And that's not counting the $50,000 for the wedding, I added. Mark, for 14 years, your sister received from me the equivalent of an annual executive salary. She never repaid a dollar, never genuinely thanked me, and when she got married, she decided I wasn't worthy of witnessing that moment. Dad, I didn't know it was that much. I thought you had helped with the apartment and some loans, but this... Mark was visibly shocked. Do you want to know something else? Open your email. I sent him the audio file of Tuesday's conversation. He listened to it completely, without interrupting. When he finished, his face showed a mixture of disappointment and shame. She only called to ask for more money. She didn't even ask how you were. Exactly, and when I told her no, she accused me of being cruel. Mark, I'm not taking revenge. I'm setting boundaries I should have established years ago. My son closed the blue folder and carefully placed it on the desk. You're right, Dad. Completely right. When Beatrice calls me again, and I know she will, I'll tell her I support your decision. In fact, I think she needs to learn this lesson. I hugged him. Thank you, son. I needed to know that at least you understand. I didn't have to wait long for Beatrice's next move. On Sunday, July 8th, around 11 in the morning, I heard my doorbell ring. I looked through the security peephole. It was her. She was alone, dressed in casual clothes, but her face showed determination. I didn't open the door. Beatrice, I can hear you from here. What do you need? I asked through the intercom. Dad, please open up. We need to talk face to face. Her voice sounded controlled, but I could detect the tension. Everything we need to say to each other can be said like this. We already had a phone conversation on Tuesday. Has anything changed since then? Yes, it has changed. I understand I made mistakes. I've come to apologize properly and talk like adults. Are you coming alone to apologize, or are you accompanied by another request for money? There was a pause. I just came to talk, Dad. Then talk. I'm listening. You can't make me talk from the street as if I were a stranger. I'm your daughter. Her voice rose in volume. Beatrice, you live in an apartment I paid for. You drive a car I bought. You just returned from a wedding I fully financed. You have received almost $500,000 from me, and you treated me like someone who didn't deserve even a chair at your celebration. So yes, right now, we will talk from wherever I decide. This is ridiculous. Mark was right. You've become bitter. There was the true Beatrice emerging. It's interesting you mention your brother. Did you know I showed him the complete documentation of everything I've given you over 14 years? Did you know he listened to the recording of our last conversation? Do you know what he told me? That he supports my decision not to give you any more money. Silence on the other end. You recorded our conversation? Of course. From now on, every communication we have will be recorded. Just as I recorded every dollar I gave you, now I record every word we exchange. Basic legal protection. I can't believe you distrust me so much. Beatrice, trust is earned with actions, not with words. Your actions have shown that you only value me as a source of funding. No more. Fine, Dad. If that's how you want to play. She started ringing the doorbell repeatedly, insistently, and annoyingly. Beatrice, stop immediately, or I'll call condominium security. Go ahead, call. Let everyone see how a father treats his daughter. She kept pressing the doorbell. I didn't hesitate. I dialed the security booth number. This is Andrew Vidal from apartment 11. I have someone causing a disturbance at my door. I need assistance. In less than 3 minutes, Gary, the head of security, arrived with another guard. I watched through the peephole as Gary approached. Miss, you are disturbing the neighbors. I need you to leave the building. I am Mr. Vidal's daughter. I have a right to be here, Beatrice shouted. Miss, Mr. Vidal contacted us. If you do not leave voluntarily, I will have to escort you out. Gary's voice was professional, but firm. I saw Beatrice look towards the peephole, knowing I was watching. This isn't over, Dad. I swear it. Gary escorted her to the elevator. When I was sure she had left the building, I opened the door and thanked security. Mr. Vidal, do you want us to register the young lady as an unauthorized person to enter the building? Gary asked. I carefully considered my answer. Not for now, Gary, but if she shows up again causing disturbances, yes, we will proceed with that. Thank you for your professionalism. I returned to my apartment and poured myself a glass of water. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. My own daughter had come to make a scene at my door because she wasn't getting what she wanted. I immediately called John and narrated what had happened. Andrew, this is escalating. You need to document this incident too. Write a detailed report with date, time, and witnesses. I'm already doing it, I replied as I typed on my computer. That afternoon, Mark called me again. Dad, Beatrice wrote to me furiously, saying you called security on her. She says, you're exaggerating everything. Son, your sister came to my house, didn't accept my decision not to open the door, and started creating a scene by obsessively pressing the doorbell. What did she expect me to do? I know, Dad. I'm just calling you to let you know she's telling the whole family that you're mistreating her. Let her say whatever she wants. The truth always comes out, and I have every truth documented. That night, before sleeping, I wrote in my personal diary, something I had resumed since Nora's death. Today my daughter came to demand, not to apologize. She came to manipulate, not to reconcile. And for the first time in 32 years, I kept the door closed. It hurts, but it was necessary. Months passed. July turned into August, August into September. During that time, Beatrice did not try to contact me again. I didn't seek her out either. I blocked her phone number and muted her social media, although I didn't unfollow her. I wanted to see what was happening in her life without her knowing I was watching, and what I saw was revealing. The glamorous wedding posts began to space out. More casual, less produced photos appeared. In August, I saw posts about learning to cook at home and discovering affordable local markets. In September, I noticed that Beatrice had started selling things in a Facebook buy and sell group. I recognized several items: the designer luggage set I gave her for her 30th birthday, a brand-name bag that cost $2,000, even some expensive appliances they had received as wedding gifts. It was October 2024 when Mark came to visit me on a Sunday as usual. While we were having paella that I had prepared following Nora's recipe, my son dropped information I already suspected. Dad, Beatrice and Ryan are going through a very complicated financial time. Ryan still hasn't found a steady job. He's had some freelance projects, but nothing stable. And Beatrice had to accept a 40% salary reduction at her company, or they would fire her. Did she tell you? I asked. Not directly. Patricia, Mom's sister, told me. Apparently, Beatrice called her asking to borrow $5,000. Patricia only has her pension. She couldn't help her. She called me worried, asking if you knew anything. Patricia, Nora's sister, had always been close to my children. What did you tell her? The truth, that you had set boundaries after how Beatrice treated you, and that I supported your decision. How did Patricia react? Surprised at first. She didn't know about the wedding. When I told her Beatrice didn't invite you but took $50,000, Patricia fell silent and then said, "Nora would be very disappointed in Beatrice." Those were her exact words, Dad. Hearing Nora's name in that context moved me deeply. My wife had been a woman of unbreakable values. Honesty, gratitude, and family respect were fundamental pillars for her. "Mark, I'm going to tell you something no one else knows yet," I said, after a prolonged silence. "I changed my will in June. Beatrice is no longer a beneficiary of absolutely anything. Everything goes to you and to 3 charitable foundations in your mother's memory." My son put his fork down on his plate. "Dad, that's definitive." "It is, and it was the right decision. Beatrice needs to learn that actions have permanent consequences, not just temporary scoldings. And if one day she truly changes, if she understands her mistake and wants to make amends." Mark had always been the family peacemaker. "Then maybe, just maybe, I will consider re-establishing emotional contact, but financially, that door is closed forever." "Son, I understand this is difficult for you. She is your sister." "She is, but you are also my father, and what she did to you was unforgivable. I support your decision, Dad." October passed quietly for me. I had started taking painting classes at a community workshop for seniors. I met interesting people with fascinating stories. I also resumed my morning walks in Central Park, something I had abandoned for years. I started to feel lighter, more present in my own life. Beatrice's absence, though painful, had created space for me to rediscover myself. On October 23rd, while having coffee on a terrace in the Upper East Side, I saw something that stopped me cold. Walking on the sidewalk opposite were Beatrice and Ryan. She wore simple clothes, none of the luxury brands she used to wear. Ryan carried bags from an economy supermarket. They looked tired. They were arguing about something as they walked. They didn't see me. I simply kept watching until they turned a corner and disappeared. I didn't feel satisfaction at seeing them like that. Nor did I feel pity. I felt something more complex, the confirmation that life always presents bills for our decisions. They had spent money they didn't have on an excessive wedding. They had burned family bridges. And now they faced the natural consequences of those choices. On November the 1st, All Saints' Day, I went alone to the cemetery to visit Nora's grave. I brought her favorite flowers, white lilies. I sat on the bench in front of her headstone and told her everything. "My love, I know this would sadden you. I know you would want me to forgive Beatrice immediately, but I also know that you never tolerated disrespect or ingratitude. You taught me that loving doesn't mean allowing yourself to be trampled on. I am doing what I believe is right, even if it hurts." An elderly lady visiting a nearby grave heard me talking to myself and approached. "Excuse me for interrupting. I couldn't help but overhear. I also come to talk to my deceased husband. Those of us who remain need these conversations." I smiled. 24 years together, 8 years without her, and I still need her advice. "Family problems?" she asked gently. "My daughter and I are estranged. She made decisions that hurt me deeply." "Do you know what I've learned in my 78 years?" the lady said. "That sometimes the greatest love we can give is to say no, especially when saying yes only feeds destructive behaviors." Her words resonated deeply within me. Thank you. I needed to hear that. She patted my shoulder and returned to her own silent conversation with her late husband. That night, Mark sent me a text message. Dad, Beatrice just posted on Instagram that they're selling their car. She says they want something more economical and ecological, but we all know the truth. Things are getting really tough for them. I replied, life is a demanding teacher. It gives the lessons after the exams. That phrase is profound, Dad. It's not mine. It's your mother's, I texted back. She used to say it when you children were facing consequences for your mischief. Indeed, days later, I saw the post. The car I had given her, valued at $38,000 when new, was now being sold for $22,000. In the comments, some people asked why they were selling it if it was relatively new. Beatrice responded with vague explanations about environmental sustainability and minimalism, but I knew the truth. They desperately needed the money. In late November, Patricia called me directly. Andrew, I need to talk to you about Beatrice. I know what happened. Mark told me everything, and although she's my niece and I love her, I have to tell you that you're doing the right thing. Nora often spoke to me about how she worried Beatrice was too materialistic, too focused on appearances. My sister would want you to teach her this lesson, even if it hurts. Thank you, Patricia. Coming from you, that means a lot. Beatrice called me again, asking for money. I told her no. I told her she needs to learn to live within her means and to value the people who truly love her. Patricia's voice was firm, but loving. She hung up on me upset, but it was necessary to say it. December arrived with cold and Christmas lights throughout the city. I decorated my apartment modestly, remembering past Christmases when the family was complete, but I didn't allow myself to fall into melancholy. I had made a decision, and I would stick to it. On December 5th, 2024, a certified letter arrived at my apartment. The mailman asked me to sign the acknowledgement of receipt. I immediately recognized the handwriting on the envelope. It was from Beatrice. My first reaction was not to open it, to leave it on the table and forget about it. But curiosity won. After preparing a coffee, I sat in my favorite armchair by the window and carefully opened the envelope. Inside were 4 handwritten pages on fine stationery. Beatrice's handwriting, normally perfect and controlled, looked shaky in several paragraphs. I began to read. Dear Dad, I know I don't deserve for you to read this letter after everything I did. I know you'll probably throw it away without finishing it, but I need to try because these past few months have been the hardest of my life, and I finally understood many things. I continued reading. Ryan and I are in a terrible financial situation. He still has no stable job, and I had to accept a 40% salary reduction or lose my job completely. We had to sell the car. We sold almost all our wedding gifts. We are even considering selling the apartment you gave me because we can't maintain it. And in the midst of all this chaos, I realized something. The only person who was always there for me unconditionally, I was the one who pushed her away. The letter continued with elaborate apologies. Dad, not inviting you to my wedding was the biggest mistake of my life. There is no excuse to justify that. I was selfish, superficial, and cruel. I was so obsessed with impressing Ryan's family, with showing them that I also came from a proper family, that I lost sight of the only thing that really mattered, that you are the person who gave me everything, the one who supported me when Mum died, the one who never failed me. I have tried to contact you in every possible way these past few months. I know you blocked my number. I know you no longer see my messages. That's why I resorted to this letter, hoping you would at least open it. Dad, I am not writing to ask you for money. I am writing to ask you for something much more valuable, an opportunity to talk, an opportunity to look you in the eyes and tell you how sorry I am, an opportunity to begin to repair the damage I caused. The last page was the most emotional. If you decide to ignore this letter, I will understand. I deserve it. But if there is a small part of you that still loves me as your daughter, I ask you to give me a chance to prove to you that I can change. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I only hope you will allow me to try. I love you, Dad. I have always loved you, even if my actions said otherwise. Your daughter, Beatrice. I slowly folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I stared out the window for a long time. Was it genuine? Or was it another desperate manipulation from someone who had exhausted all her options? I called John. I received a letter from Beatrice, 4 pages of apologies and pleas for a meeting. What are you going to do? My friend asked. I'm going to think long and hard before deciding, but if I agree to see her, it will be on my terms, on my territory, with my conditions. I spent 3 days reflecting. I reread the letter several times, looking for signs of sincerity or manipulation. I spoke with Mark, who confessed that Beatrice had also written him a similar letter. Dad, I think she's genuinely desperate. I don't know if that means she's repentant or just scared by her financial situation, but she deserves a response, even if it's negative. On December 9th, I made my decision, unblocked Beatrice's number, and sent her a text message. I received your letter. I agree to meet you on December 10th at 4 p.m. at the Plaza Hotel's Palm Court on Park Avenue. Come alone. Don't be late. The response arrived in less than 2 minutes. Thank you, Dad. I'll be there, I promise. On December 10th, I arrived at the cafe at 3:45. I chose a discreet but visible table in a corner. I ordered a black coffee and waited. Beatrice arrived at 3:58, 2 minutes before the agreed time. She looked different. Her clothes were simple, no visible brands. She didn't wear the elaborate makeup of before. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired, thinner, more humble. She sat across from me without trying to hug or kiss me. Thank you for coming, Dad. We have 1 hour, I said, looking at my watch. After that, I'm leaving, so use your time wisely. She nodded and ordered chamomile tea from the waiter. I don't know where to start. Start with the truth. The whole truth. She took a deep breath. You're right about everything you said. I became someone who only valued you for your money. It wasn't conscious at first, but little by little, every time I had a problem, my first reaction was to call you to solve it financially. And the wedding? I asked directly. Her eyes filled with tears. The wedding was my worst moment. Ryan and I wanted to impress his parents, his friends from wealthy families. I thought that if we did something grand, they would finally see me as an equal. But to achieve that, I needed your money without your presence. Why? Because I was afraid you would look out of place, that you wouldn't fit into that pretentious environment we wanted to create. So you were ashamed of me. Yes, and that's the ugliest and most painful truth I can admit. I was ashamed that you weren't like Ryan's parents, with their aristocratic surnames and elite contacts. And now I see how absurd that was. Ryan's parents didn't help us when he lost his job. They didn't lend us $1 when we started having problems. But you, who were always there, whom I rejected, you were the only one who truly loved me unconditionally. I took an envelope from my jacket. Inside were 3 documents. This is what I brought for you. First, a certified copy of my new will. As you will see, you are no longer a beneficiary. Everything goes to Mark and to foundations in your mother's memory. I watched her turn pale as she read. Second, the document of unrepaid loans. You legally owe me $45,000 with interest. Third, the total calculation of everything I gave you over 14 years, $463,200, not counting the wedding. Beatrice trembled as she reviewed the papers. Dad, let me finish. I am not showing you this to humiliate you. I am showing it to you so you understand the magnitude of what you destroyed. You didn't just reject your father. You rejected 14 years of sacrifice, of love, of dedication, and you did it out of vanity, out of superficiality, out of wanting to belong to a world that ultimately didn't want you when you needed it most. You're right, completely right. The question now is, what are you willing to do to truly change? Because apologizing with words is easy. Changing with actions is difficult. I'll do whatever it takes, Dad. Then listen to my conditions. If you truly want an opportunity to rebuild something, it will be on my terms, on my territory with my conditions. There will be no more money, ever. You will seek therapy to work on your values and priorities, and you will demonstrate with months, perhaps years, of consistent actions that you understand what you lost. I accept all of that. I accept it. We'll see. For now, consider this an end, not a pause. I need time to heal. 6 months have passed since that meeting at the Plaza Hotel's Palm Court. We are now in June 2025. Exactly 1 year after that wedding to which I was not invited. And I want to tell you the complete truth, the one Beatrice never knew until it was too late. When my daughter called me in March 2024, asking for $50,000 for her wedding without inviting me, I felt something break inside me. But it wasn't my heart. It was the blindfold I had worn for years. At that precise moment, I understood that I had failed as a father, not by giving too little, but by giving too much without teaching her the real value of things. That night, when I told John I would give her the money, he thought I had lost my mind, but I knew exactly what I was doing. You see, I didn't give her that $50,000 expecting her to change her mind and invite me. I gave her that money knowing she wouldn't. I gave her that money deliberately so that every photo of her perfect wedding, every detail of that extravagant celebration would be forever marked with a truth she couldn't erase, that she had humiliated the man who paid every dollar of her happiness. That was my strategy from the very beginning. It wasn't revenge. It was education. It was the most expensive and painful lesson I could teach her, but also the most necessary. Every time she looked at the photos of that wedding for the rest of her life, she would have to face what she did. Every time she remembered that perfect day, she would also remember that her father, who made it possible, was not there because she chose it that way. The following months only confirmed what I already knew. Beatrice did not value relationships. She valued transactions. When she called me asking for $30,000 more just weeks after her wedding, without even a genuine thank you for the previous amount, she was simply being who she had always been. And I was finally being the father I should have been years ago. One who says no, one who sets limits, one who teaches that actions have permanent consequences. I changed my will not out of cruelty, but out of justice. Mark understood from the beginning that love cannot be confused with financial permissiveness. He visited me every Sunday, not because he needed something from me, but because he genuinely wanted to spend time with me. That is the difference between a child who loves and one who only needs. In these 6 months since our meeting in December, Beatrice has tried to show change. She calls me every 15 days just to ask how I am, without asking for anything. She sends me photos of flowers she sees in the street because she knows I like gardening. She wrote me another letter in March, telling me she started psychological therapy. They sold the apartment I gave her and moved to a smaller, more affordable one. Ryan finally got a stable job, although with a lower salary than he had before. They are learning to live within their means. Have you forgiven Beatrice? That's the question Mark asked me last week during our Sunday lunch. My answer was honest. I'm in the process. Forgiveness is not a switch that turns on and off. It is a long path that requires seeing sustained changes, not just pretty words or desperate gestures. Will I change my will back? No, that decision is permanent. Beatrice will have to build her life without the expectation of inheriting my estate, and that is exactly what she needs. Will I ever give her money again? Never. That chapter is closed forever. If one day she or her future children face a true medical emergency or life or death situation, I will evaluate helping in ways that do not involve direct money transfers, but loans, gifts, funding of lifestyles. Never again. What I have started giving her again is time. A month ago, I agreed to have lunch with her and Ryan. It was uncomfortable, tense, but also necessary. Ryan apologized directly for having been part of the decision to exclude me from the wedding. Mr. Vidal, there is no excuse for what we did. Beatrice and I were obsessed with impressing people who ultimately didn't matter, and we lost sight of who really mattered. I appreciated his honesty, even if it came late. Will we ever recover the father-daughter relationship we had when she was a child? Probably not. There are some things that once broken are never the same again. But perhaps we can build something different, something more mature, more honest, based on mutual respect instead of financial dependence. The most important lesson I learned from all this is that true love sometimes manifests itself by saying no. For 14 years, I said yes to Beatrice in everything. I gave her money when she asked for it. I solved her problems when they arose. I rescued her from her bad decisions again and again. And with every yes, without realizing it, I was teaching her that Dad would always be there to fix everything, that she would never have to face real consequences. My biggest mistake as a father was not giving her too much. It was not teaching her to value what she received. It was not setting clear boundaries. It was confusing material provision with genuine love. Nora used to tell me, Andrew, children need roots and wings. Roots to know where they come from, wings to fly on their own. I gave her deep roots, but I never forced her to use her wings. I was always there to carry her when I should have let her fly, and if necessary, fall. Now, at 66, I have learned that dignity is not negotiable, that respect cannot be bought, that true family is defined by emotional presence, not by economic transactions, and that sometimes the greatest act of love we can give is to allow the people we love to face the full consequences of their decisions. Beatrice lost my financial support forever. She lost her inheritance. She lost years of a relationship that we will never recover, and all for $50,000 and a one-day wedding. Was it worth it? She answered that question herself in our last conversation. Dad, I would trade every photo of that wedding, every detail of that day, for having had your hand holding mine when I walked down the aisle. But that opportunity passed, and that is precisely the lesson. The decisions we make today define who we are tomorrow, and some decisions have no turning back. If you like this story, support us with a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave us your opinions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box that appears on the left. Thank you for joining us.